thanks for having me up at the school. I know a couple people here go to school, and it doesn't seem like 35 years ago, but I got the roots of being an entrepreneur when I was in school. I'm a firm believer in education, and education can come in many ways. For me, it was more socialization than education. When I went to school, I went to school at Cal Poly Pomona. It was east of Los Angeles. My first major was journalism, and that was only because I asked the girl in front of me what her major was, and she was cute, and I wanted a date, and she was a journalism major. That lasted 6 months. Then I became a recreation administration major. But during that time, I walked through campus, and I looked across the campus, and I heard this music coming from somewhere, and I got drawn towards the music. And there were some guys setting up a PA, just like the guys today in here were, but it was outside. And I asked what they were doing. They said, we put on concerts on campus, and today we have a band called TSOL playing. It was a punk band back in the late 70s. And I said, can I help out? And there I fell in love with live music. And for me, it was like a passion to be able to, I just fell in love with live music. I got involved in campus activities, met people, like-minded people, started learning the basics of what I was about. I was also a member of the ski team. And I found out that I needed to raise money for our ski team. Yes, a California ski team, guys. There is those. And we weren't that good, but we enjoyed going out to the races. And I started blending my love of music throughout my life. And we started throwing concerts on campus, started blending them together with some of these things, the early branding opportunities that I had. My brand opportunities are probably not legal at 90% of the colleges, if not 100% now. Those brandings included 5 bands for $5 for all the beer you could drink and bands. Well, you can't sell beer. They said they couldn't sell beer, so I sold them a free mug for $5 and gave the beer away for free. Probably not legal in most places now, but I started learning this entrepreneurial part. I also learned an entrepreneur usually learns early in their life that they're not employable. I'm terminally unemployable. I probably got fired for more jobs than you guys, years you've lived in your life. I always had an opinion. It was better. I've learned through life it's better to listen at times. But then it was like I had an opinion on everything. So that love of music has turned. So I'm going to just run a presentation. I'm going to be here throughout the day today. I'm doing a couple other classes so we can get into other things. But this is part of the Entertainment Institute. The Entertainment Institute, we founded, and it was founded with an artist named Matt Halprin, who was a drummer for the band Periphery. He found that he was living his life, and he's on the road, and he's touring. As record sales declined, he was looking for ways to be able to subsidize his income when he was on the road. And the way he found to subsidize his income, he started giving drum lessons in the parking lot after sound check or before sound check. He came to me, and I liked the idea. I said, well, Matt, how are you going to grow this thing? And he said, well, originally the company, it was called Band Happy. I said, well, we have a lot of artists out here on my tours that are looking for other ways to subsidize their incomes. Maybe I can help open those doors for people. I always encourage artists that we have to figure out ways to make incomes when we're not on the road. It's hard to be on the road. You have to multitask. So we took this idea and we turned it into the Entertainment Institute. On the Warped Tour last summer, there was artists every day that would do classes backstage. The classes are basically $25. The artist would take 60% of the money. We would facilitate it for them. We did over 8,000 students on the road. A lot of artists that worked really hard on the road were able to make more money teaching classes than they were on the road in the band. It's a great way to do it. So that's the Entertainment Institute. We also just try to help in real time, because real time, the business is changing so quick. I read about 14 articles this morning on streaming music. It really questions to me when Universal Records is saying 52% of their music, their income this quarter came from music streaming. However, Spotify and Pandora are still losing money. It's a lot to think about right now in business. But the way that you think like an entrepreneur, and I'll just take this about, kind of based on the Warped Tour model. I'd worked 13 years in the music business before I started the Warped Tour. A lot of people ask me, how did you start the Warped Tour? Well, I worked in the clubs of Los Angeles as a stage manager. I swept the floors. I threw people off stage all night. One of my first innovations in the music business, and you guys probably hate it for some of you that like to go to shows without barricades, was to actually put barricades in front of stages. Because I got tired of getting my head kicked in every night from trying to keep people off stages. But 13 years into the business, I was the first stage manager of Lollapalooza in 1991. I was working 320 shows a year. I was working every night, everything. I was a promoter rep. I worked myself up to this position where I had 3 or 4 stage managers working for me. We were running shows. I was still buying the catering every night, setting up the thing. And I went out on Lollapalooza in 1991, had never been on the road, but I had taken care of the bands. And taking care of bands wasn't like, being their friends. I'm not really a friend of artists a lot of times. I can either be now I'm just a mentor or a disciplinarian. That's really what I am. That's what I've turned into on the road. But with the Warped Tour in 1995, I was ready to have my first child. It was time for me to get a real job. How many of your parents are asking you, like, are you going to get a real job? You're not there yet. You're still in school. But if you're in the music business, get used to it. A lot of times, if you're in a band, when are you going to get a real job? Well, it was 1995, and I'd already worked almost 13 years in the business, and it was maybe time for me to get a real job. I needed health insurance for my child. I did a lot of things like that. I was sitting in the snow after working a snowboard event. We used to do these events for charity called Board Aid. And I would sit and working with Board Aid, and I was sitting in the snow, and I just convinced Perry Farrell, who was a singer of Jane's Addiction, he had left that band and started Psycom, to sing a Jane's Addiction song called Coming Down the Mountain. And we did a big board across with it. And what ended up happening was I sat in the snow and I realized that this whole lifestyle that we had in Southern California, skateboarding, music, punk rock, I had just heard that the X Games were going to come. They had just announced the X Games. And I said, this lifestyle we have led in Southern California could go across the country. So for one last summer, I thought I would go out with my friends. And the idea, at this point, it wasn't a fantastic product, but I said, you know what, let's go across the country one last summer. I'm going to build a skateboard ramp. I'm going to go to bands I know, because I'd actually seen things like all these bands were touring clubs, and I'm like, let's get them together and try to take this scene across the country. So this idea originally started out, and it was actually going to be called The Bomb. Your parents remember that term, The Bomb? I couldn't afford name searches. I couldn't do Google searches. I did things, but I thought this would be great. And I took all that experience, and patience is very important in this business. It takes time in building relationships to this day. And I went back through this thing, and I was like, I couldn't afford more name searches. They were $400 a name search. The Bomb, the day we were going to announce that tour was the Oklahoma City bombing. So probably not the brightest time to call something The Bomb. So I went to my resources. I went and called Trans World Publications. I did skateboarding and surfing, and I said, hey, you guys have a magazine called Warp Magazine. It was this lifestyle magazine. You can still get it in Japan because they have all the cool things still in Japan. And I said, can I borrow the name of your magazine? I will not put out a magazine if you don't put out a tour. And that's where the Warp Tour came from. And the first summer we went out, the idea, it was really good. It was an absolute failure. And it probably would have been called The Bomb Bombed. I got great bands. I got Sublime. I got No Doubt. I got Quicksand. I got Orange 9mm. I got all these cool bands to come and play L7. But it actually was probably, for me, it was just too far. It was a little ahead. People thought I was going to be duplicating Lollapalooza because I'd worked on it. And they didn't realize that it was different. But enough people saw that tour and said, wow, it's a good idea. Let's give Kevin a second chance. I got a second chance because of the experience I was willing to put in the time. So you have to have an idea. Then you need to understand your market. And I continually, after 22 years, it's trying to understand the market. When you have a brand that's older than the average patron that comes to Warped Tour, it's kind of continually trying to understand that market. So back then, that market was, I thought everyone liked. In California, we listened to a lot of different music, but back then it was a little more separate. There was punk bands, there were ska bands, there was kind of heavy, you didn't mix them all together. So it took a moment in time. What legitimized that idea for me was by really working hard that first tour, was that second year. I got 2 bands, Pennywise and No Effects, that heard that all the bands had a great time out with me on the road. And they kind of solidified where we stood. They got involved in the tour. I had no money to put it on. I was broke. I was back working in the clubs every night of the week trying to pay for my rent and my new child. But it actually kind of solidified us within known as a punk rock tour back then. That second year, I also had to make that decision. like sponsorship. That was a bad word. Some people still think sponsorship's a bad word, but if you are going to be out doing things in this music business, it's really a component of anything you do now. Having brand association back in 1996 wasn't that great. The biggest mistake I almost made that first year was I had a partner who convinced me that said, I have a great company for the Warped Tour. It'd be awesome, Kevin, because he works at Calvin Klein. I'm going to fly to New York with our last money, and I'm going to go convince Calvin Klein that they want to be part of the Vans Warped Tour, or the Warped Tour at that point. Can you imagine? And my wife is an artist. She was a graphic artist and designer. Actually drew a skateboard back then. You had to have a hand-drawn thing that said Calvin Klein Warped Tour. That would have been a legendary bad branding, not knowing your brand. Because you think Pennywise and NoFX would have played on the Calvin Klein Warped Tour back then? So I went through this whole thing, and then it was like, I was panicking. He went back there. They got stuck in the snowstorm of 1996. It's a legendary blizzard. They were just talking about it when they had the storms on the East Coast. And said, they got stuck in the snowstorm, and I got a call from Vans at that point. And Vans said, come over to our offices. We want to talk to you about some stuff. Immediately, in my mind, I thought they wanted to talk to me about my music festival. So I went there, and I went down there and got put in this little room. The CEO of the company at the time, Walter Schoenfeld, came in and said, hey, I want to hire you to work on my amateur skate program. I wasn't even there to talk about my music program. He was bringing me to interview for a job at Vans. And that's when you realize you have nothing to lose. Your idea is so good. And it connected like Vans Warped Tour. This was a shoe we all grew up with. Every kid in California grew up in Vans. I also put in my mind that Vans wasn't really well known outside California. They were a $3 million company. They're over $2 billion now. But what ended up happening was I had nothing to lose in life at that point. So it's a fine line. Just when you have nothing to lose, just go for it. Just like, all right, you're never going to have any amateur skaters unless you're part of my successful music festival. And I walked out with my first sponsorship. That was the first sponsorship I really ever did. It was and that's where it became the Vans Warped Tour 21 years ago. So you have this great idea, understanding your market, and that's where I started realizing that to that point, the market was 22-year, punk rock at that point. We got known as a punk rock festival. We always had integrated a lot of kinds of music, but I knew that I couldn't lead with certain things. I learned about that in about 1998. I booked a guy named Eminem on Warped Tour. I booked Eminem, which I thought was really cool, but I announced Eminem, and this is when internet started coming up, and the message boards, the early message boards, and I was getting death threats. Like, wow, death threats to you're putting Eminem on the tour. So I really always know how I have to blend the packaging. I also realized 22 years later, I got a little off target last year. I decided that I'm not announcing the lineup until March 22nd. I think when people read the lineup, they're going to see that we're getting back to the basic roots of where we came from with this lineup this year. Yeah, it's going to, and I think I was getting to this point where, everyone wanted to be on Warped Tour. We had accidental pop, I call it, accidental. Katy Perry started on the Warped Tour. I didn't go looking for Katy Perry. I was doing a movie, and I was looking for a song, and I just checked into her, and I go, wow, she's kind of deep in her, like she comes off to me as being punk. If you've ever met her, she's kind of punk. She does what she wants. So I put her on the tour. Even an act like Echo Smith, they walked in with their guitars into my office and started playing songs, which I said, wow, that takes a lot of guts just to walk in here with an acoustic guitar and start playing. But then the past few years, everyone's coming to me with pop acts. They're coming to me with EDM acts. They're coming. You won't be seeing a lot of pop and EDM on Warped Tour this year. It's very back to the basics. We're going back to the basics right now. I think we're in a back to the basics time. We can talk about that later in some of the classes. So, understanding who your customers are going to be if you're going to be an entrepreneur very quickly. Understanding your market. I think right now, a lot of people, I was looking at some business plans last night. I do a lot of investing in companies and things, so I get a lot of business plans now. And I'm looking at for you guys, you have to know who your competitors are and knowing your market. I didn't really know that. I just went out there and did this. There was no thing. But nowadays, it's funny how often I'm getting things, and most of it's in the tech space in our world. Everyone has an app. I mean, everyone has an app, and they're trying to show it. But it's how do you refine that app? We're watching that in technology right now, and we were just talking earlier about how Pandora is up for sale. I was at Pandora last week making marketing deals and doing different things, and all of a sudden they're up for sale. Now, Spotify seems to be winning with younger markets. Did they catch the wake and be second into the marketplace? Is there a place for a third and fourth and fifth streaming company? But I'm really worried about streaming right now because every streaming company is losing money. What happens if SoundCloud goes away? What happens is, where are we back to? So there's stuff we can talk about later today about that if anyone has any questions. But know what you're going to do. Know that if there's the competitors. I got the business plan I read last night. I read three other, in the last 2 weeks, I see 3 companies that are already beyond where they're already at. So I think they're already late to the marketplace. Funding. How are you going to pay for it? I think that's the biggest question we all have in life is how we're going to pay for it. My first project, the Warped Tour, I didn't really have a lot of money. I don't know. I really don't know how to. I can't recommend how you did, but I had worked 12, 13 years, working every night of the week, and I took every bit of my money and I was all in. Most entrepreneurs, you're not dabbling your feet in if you're an entrepreneur. You're all in. You know, every time I'm partway in, that business has failed. I started a clothing company, a great clothing company many years ago with Fletcher from Pennywise. It was called Family Clothing. Best designs, we had all these things. But no one was, we didn't give the company to someone else to run for us. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur, usually on your first project, you have to be all in. You have to be willing to cut the branches off behind you, see if you're going to splat on the ground or you're going to grow roots before you hit the ground. With the Warped Tour, I was all in on that one. I also realized at the beginning that the only one that's going to talk about my project and be as passionate about, still to this day, about the Warped Tour is myself. I know at first I'm just like, I'm a crew guy. I just stand in the back. I load trucks, and cases don't talk back. I'm really cool about this. But then I had to put myself out in the front and go out there and say, I believe in this project. And I still to today believe in what the Warped Tour stands for. Now, other projects I have and other things in Entrepreneur, we find someone to take the lead and be that person and is passionate about it. 3 years ago, we started a brewery called St. Archer Brewery. It was all surfers and skaters, going back to the roots of where I came from. Paul Rodriguez, the skater, was a partner. Taylor Knox, Taylor Steele, Mikey Taylor. We put this whole brand together called St. Archer Brewery, and it was built on the same fundamentals that the Warped Tour was booked on. Put out a great product that no one's putting out. There was no beer put out that was all about our lifestyle, surfing, skating, being an active lifestyle. You know, you can have a beer. You can't drink 40 of them if you're going to go, surfing, but you can have one after surfing. So we decided a brand. We hired the best brewers in the country we can find. They made awesome beer. We won gold medals before. And then it grew so fast, we had to make a decision a few months ago to sell it, and Miller Coors came in. They're building our own new brewery. Is going to be built up in Milwaukee. We're still making it. We're still running the company. The core of it's still there. So it's like some of the things in budgets. So do your budgets, understand what you're going to do it, and willing to what you're going to do. As an entrepreneur, sometimes you have to go get financing. So that's a real thought. Do you go get strategic financing to someone that can bring it to the table and help build your company, or are you just looking for investors? Most of the stuff we do in Entrepreneur now is strategic partnerships. We're looking for people, we'll give equity up. All the skaters in St. Archer, they didn't take fees for endorsing a product. They took equity in the brand to talk about it. So there's different ways to fund things now, more than just cash. Finding strategic partners that way. So a lot of the companies I'm building now are all strategically branded. The people involved in it are equity owners in it, because I always say, you give your money to Wall Street, those guys aren't going to look out for you in the long run. So we're really looking out for each other and the people in the community that we're in. We're launching a coconut water in 2 weeks called Villager, because we looked at that marketplace and say every coconut water has like a coconut tree or a coconut on it or something, and there's no brand identity to it. So we're building, all it is about putting refrigerators at skate parks, surf shops, lifestyle shops, to where the products are much healthier product. A lot of people are stepping away from things and trying to make things healthier. So it's looking at the market in a different way. Marketing, building your brand identity. From the beginning with the Warped Tour, I drew that arrow in 1996. It's a very strong, look for a strong brand identity to what your brand stands for. We always use that arrow in everything we do. It's pretty identifiable. people kind of know and gravitate towards it, but we can change. This year's artwork is very Greek god, so every year we can go to artists and have them do things and make it unique, but the brand identity is very important to your brand, and what it's going to stand for and what it's about. And like I said, I was probably getting a little bit off target, but it's been it wasn't supposed to be 22 years. I mean, this tour was going to be 1 year in 1995, and I was going to go probably be a school teacher or do something. That's what I wanted to do. I've taken this tour now, and in some ways in my mind, I look at the Warped Tour as the largest classroom in America in some ways. 90% of the people in schools or in classes are going there to have, at the Warped Tour, it's to have a great day in the sun, see some bands, have fun with your friends. But we look at it as a classroom, and 10% of those kids are starting brands. They're getting involved in nonprofits. They're maybe starting bands. They want to be tech people on the road, so we try to encourage them to come out and help and learn what we're doing. So I look at the Warped Tour as a classroom. We do 500,000 kids a year. That's pretty much what we do every year now. And 50,000 of those people are put back into the community, hopefully to be good stewards for the music that I'm passionate about and kids are passionate about. The best thing when we added that 3 cans of food to the Warped Tour to be able to skip the line versus charging you guys $5 or money to skip the line. It's fun. The best thing I get is when someone emails me and says, I did a basement party and admission was $3 and we donated the canned foods to the thing. So it's trying to be a good steward to your community as an entrepreneur. Marketing, how do you advertise? I think we're at a change where everything's gone so quick. 3 years ago, if you talked to advertising, it was all just going to be about social media. Everyone's going to bomb. And how many of you feel like you're blurred with how much social media is like being thrown at you guys? Raise a hand. You can't follow what's going on. So we've gone back, and we went from starting out early on, it was always about passing out flyers in front of shows. Word of mouth was very important. Then we went through this whole period, and things changed. We got away from print. We got away from TV. We got away from radio because they don't play any of our bands anyhow. And then we went to social media, and it seemed to be working really well, to where now I've gone completely backwards to this year. It's going back to a mix where social media, but back to the basics are back. We're going back to a basic time. Some of the simplest things are coming back in vogue. Putting out posters. Last year I walked in the office and they give you all the analytics and stuff, and someone goes, the average person's paying attention for 6 seconds online to anything. I go print 43,000 posters. The guy that runs my marketing, like his face got all twitchy and scary because I don't think he knew what a poster was because he was social media driven. And I says, go print me 43,000 posters, and I want to get 1,000 out to each market. Contact our best fans out in each marketplace and send them 25 posters, and if they send us photos, we'll give them passes. We'll do some in case. And he goes, why? And I go, well, you know what? If that poster's put in the right place, it's going to last more than 9 seconds. So there's a balance going on. So it's constantly continually figuring out how you're going to market your brand these days. Every demo is different, too, you guys. It's different ages have to be marketed in different ways. We're relaunching the Taste of Chaos tour. I don't know if any of you guys remember that tour I used to have. It was kind of the indoor Warped Tour. We're about ready to announce a 37 tour from that era of bands right now. And we're marketing that even a little different because that age group is probably going to be 23 to 30 that are going to go to that shows, and they're digesting how you market to them is totally different than you would the Warped Tour, which is 13 to 21 or 22. Plan. It's probably not the best thing I've ever done in life. Long-term plans. I really don't. That's probably my biggest weakness is long-term plans. People ask me in my life, what is your long-term plan? Now I have a little more responsibility. I have 2 daughters. I have a wife. You have those kind of plans that come into your life that you have to try to think about them for the future. Me, it's always been, everyone asks, Warped Tour. I go, well, if it goes this year and it was okay, we'll go the following year. I think last year for me, it was a real eye-opening experience of where Warped Tour has gone in 21 years. To be honest, it was the worst summer I ever had in my life. I dealt with a lot of different things I didn't like, didn't have any fun at it. This summer better be fun. I've always had fun in my life. And this summer, when you see it, it's going to be a fun summer, or it'll be the end of Warped Tour. It just is. And I think it's going to be fun by the way I booked the bands and the way I booked it. I like to have fun in life. It's hard work. You're going to work every day. If you're an entrepreneur, there's no hours. If you like to, how many of you like to sleep late? Yeah, probably not going to be an entrepreneur. Okay. You know, there's a famous thing from Martin Atkins. He says, get the fuck out of bed. That's it. You know, you get up in the morning as an entrepreneur. I like to get a jump on the world because I'm doing business in almost every time zone now at different times. I like to send things out at 4 in the morning, 2 in the morning. Keep people off balance a little bit. Nothing freaks people out when they're driving, like wake up in New York and you got to do all this business in New York and they're getting up at 7, 8 in the morning and you've already sent 8 things to them in the morning. It gets you a little balance, a little edge on them because they're like, wait, the first thing they're waking up is thinking that you're already waiting for an answer to them. But I also know at 2 in the afternoon, I might want to go out and do something in the sun. That's an entrepreneur. You have to be willing to work, and usually that means getting out of bed early in the morning. So that's a good habit to get in. It's just a very simple tip. That long-term plan, though, I am trying to do more of that now. But even the way we work, it has to change. The brewery, we had a 5-year plan. We hit it in 6 months. You know, we didn't plan on selling the Miller Coors. It was not in our mindset. I know the diehard brew people are going to say, you know, oh, man, they sold out. It's not selling out, you guys. Sometimes you have to make those decisions to keep going. You know, the way we financed, there was 20 people involved in the thing. Skater surfers, they invested, and they got 5 times their return. We just needed $12 to $20 million to grow to the next level. And the only way we can get it. But all the stipulations for us allowed us to keep the company the way we wanted. So we had to rebuild that 5-year plan 6 times in the first 18 months. And things move quickly these days. So long-term planning, you have to be flexible with it. You live and die by your decisions. An entrepreneur has to be willing to take responsibility. You know, not all decisions in life are going to be popular decisions. I had to make some of those last year. But you know what? They were the decisions, and I lived and died by them. I took a lot of heat for some of the decisions I made. But you know what? It was with all the facts that I had, and I also learned you can't negotiate with the internet. Learn that right now in your lives, guys. Either you ignore the internet or you double-barrel shotgun your response to the internet. I try to negotiate with it. I'm more of a person that likes to talk to people. You got a problem with me? Come sit down under my tent in front of the bus. I still go on every Warped Tour date so I can address everything head on. Some of my other festivals and tours I can put out a different way. But you're learning in life right now, if you're going to be, you have to be willing to just live and die by your decisions. You can learn from those decisions, but live and die by them. Learn from your failures. And you never know how you're going to learn. A few years ago, I did a thing with Rob Zombie. You guys all know Rob Zombie, right? King of Horror. Awesome. Kevin Lyman does all these festivals, does these things. We do a Mayhem Festival. That's a pretty big metal festival. We decided to do a haunted house together. Rob Zombie's Great American Nightmare. We invested a lot of money. We got the best haunted house builder in the nation to be part of our team. We put this thing together. We thought, no way, this is a sure. We had concerts going every night. We'd have the Used play. We'd do a punk rock night. We'd do all these things tied into a haunted house. It was the absolute biggest disaster I've ever worked on. And when you look at it, know your market again. I didn't know the horror market as well as I assumed. We thought that, well, Rob Zombie, God, isn't sure. But you know what? Most of you guys at Halloween, you want to go with your friends to an event, you want to buy a ticket on Groupon, you want to go to something with some friends, and you want people to run up behind you and go, boo, like fun, laughter. Rob Zombie's haunted house was disturbing. Most people don't want to be disturbed. And most people that want to be disturbed don't want to watch a Used concert right before. You know, Used concert was great, haunted house didn't work. I also realized that I don't want to be standing at 2 in the morning in a parking lot arguing the reality of our Sharon Tate murder room that it wasn't realistic enough with some guy. I mean, you know, I'm 54 years old and I'm like standing there discussing this going, wow, this guy could be the next like mass murderer and I'm going to be his first victim. But I also realized at that point, everyone, gamblers, promoters, gamblers, there's a whole world of gambling out there. They want to double down on everything. My partners were like, dude, we can put this together. We built this haunted house. It's great. We've already put $600,000 into building this haunted house. And I said, no, I'm out. I'm not doing this, and this is the reasons. One, I don't do everything for money in this world, despite what you may. I'm not. Money has come to me, but it's not my driving force. Every time I make a decision to make money, just about doing something for money, it fails. Money will come if you work hard and you build the right product. The haunted house thing, though, I'm going, you know what? One, I realized I just gave up my favorite month of the year. October to me is my favorite month of the year. Fishing's really good. The beach is nice. I don't want to be standing in a parking lot like this. And how many more Octobers? You never think you're going to live. When you're 21, I never thought I was going to live to be 30. You hit 30, you don't think you're going to hit 40. You hit 50, and then you go, shit, if I get 20 more years, I'm lucky, especially with the lifestyles we've led on the road. You know? So I don't want to be I don't want to spend my Octobers doing this. Two, I lost mid-six figures on the deal, but my kids I didn't have to pull them out of school. I didn't have to change my lifestyle because I keep my lifestyle pretty low-key. So why am I doing this? So put away the haunted house program. So learning from my failures, you never know what, it wasn't money. Money was one, okay, that was it. But it was like that October was so important to me. So what I did with the past 2 Octobers, 2 years ago, I went fishing all October. I had a great trip with some friends, a bunch of music guys, went to the Amazon. It was awesome. Last year, I put on 2 awesome festivals. I did a Taste of Chaos reunion show with Jimmy Eat World, Dashboard Confessional, all these guys had a blast. And the following week, I put on this festival with all my friends called It's Not Dead Fest. I got Descendants, Bad Religion, NoFX, Pennywise, 37 other punk bands. We put up the old skate ramp. No one expected to make money on this. I didn't expect to make money. My wife goes, why are you doing this? I go, I need it for my soul. Punk's in my soul. And after last summer, it was a pretty miserable summer in my life. I said, I want to do this for my soul. Sometimes you have to replenish your soul. So I put the show together. 21,000 people thought they needed to replenish their soul in punk rock. And we had a blast. Now everyone's asking me, Kevin, you're going to do it again? You got to do it next year. And I go, no, I don't. They go, well, you made a lot of money on it. I go, no, that's okay. That wasn't about why I did this. It was to replenish my soul. My soul feels good right now. I feel in a pretty good space. I don't need to do it again. Maybe 5 years ago we'll do something. And it was funny. I had to finally just tell these guys, I'm not doing it again next year. That was fun. It was like you can't recapture some things. Doing something every year. Warped Tour we need to do every year because it actually helps the whole scene of music. All those indie labels were out there. I feel I need to keep replenishing those bands and get kids involved in the indie music scene. 98% of the bands on Warped Tour this summer are indie bands. So it's important to me. So learning from your failures. Be confident, not cocky. As a student, going into your first interviews and stuff, you have to have confidence in yourselves, but there's that fine line right now. I have a great intern working in our office right now. She's so good, but the other people, my company is run by women. I've got 8 employees, 7 of them are women that work in my office. My interns right now, I've got 2 guys and 3 girls working in there. There's one girl, she's going to make it in this business, but I'm having to tone her, really talk to her, you're so confident you're coming off like you know the world. There's a time to listen. But that confidence is important. Communication is very important still in this business. You have to learn how to talk to someone. One of my interns from last year, she came in, she was so quiet. And my whole thing in helping her was talking to her. I'd make her speak in the office. I'd make her talk. She learned enough to talk. She just got hired as head of digital marketing for Fearless Records. The best thing that came out of Christmas was when she came to me and said, I have to leave the company. I got a full-time job over at Fearless. I was stoked for her. But she learned how to speak. So it's that balance of being confident, not cocky. And then you look at the world from a different perspective. You've just got to look at everything completely different. A lot of stuff you can read, and I don't need to go in this too much. I want to do a bunch of questions, and I know time's going to run out. The music industry had old ways. We had old ways, the record labels, everything like that. All innovation in music really came from technology. Because all great technology people talk about disruption of the marketplace, disruption. That's an environment that we live in right now. I won't comment on the disruption of our political system right now with the candidates for president, but we can talk about that. But there's so much disruption in this world right now, but it came out of technology. And I really learned that by going and talking to people who started Eventbrite people who started Ticketfly, people who start Pandora. I spent a lot of my life up there, and everything they say is, you've been a disruptor, Kevin. You disrupt the business constantly. I'm still independent. I haven't sold to Live Nation. I haven't sold to AEG. I was offered the CEO position of SFX, which you guys probably just read about. It's going bankrupt right now. I said, there's no way I could work for this guy. I said my starting price at that point was $3 billion, you know? Because that would have been all about the money to have to do something that crazy in my life. But disruption of our space, and that's where you guys are in a great time in music. I know that we've talked last night at dinner about there are more people making a living in music than ever before. And a living is having a house to me, having some, friends, going out to dinner once in a while, barbecuing with your friends, maybe a little time for vacation. If you're looking for front row Knicks tickets or Laker tickets or living in the Hollywood Hills, there's less opportunities out there for that. Because we actually came from a business of failure. 90% of the records were put out, lost money before. 10% funded the whole business. I always said, how does 10% of the things in the world, like if 10% of the Toyotas stalled coming out of the parking lot, they'd be out of business. 10% of the phone calls went through. Why was the music business allowed to do that? Oh, we only got 10 minutes. So we're going to do, God, that went quick. Sorry, guys. I'm going to skim through this. Here are the beats between the notes. That's how I live my life. And be able to check yourself, realize that you are replaceable. When I die, the world will keep spinning and will keep going on. So don't, check yourself often and give back. Every business I start has a charity component. We've given 25 cents from every ticket of the Warped Tour throughout history, even when we were losing money. And if you take 10 million tickets, that's added up to charity. I just did my golf tournament on the board of Music Cares. I had a knee replacement, ankle rebuild, hip scrape, because I didn't have health insurance when I was starting on the business and hurt myself a lot and put myself back together with duct tape. So now we work very hard to make sure you guys won't have that problem, hopefully, in your lives as crew people. And that's thinking like an entrepreneur. So let's get into some questions. We've only got 10 minutes. I'm sorry. Yabbled on.
So what was it about the last year's Warped Tour that made you so upset? Because I actually went, and I had an amazing time. I thought it was great.
The show was great. It had nothing to do with the show. For me, it was a personal thing. It was that whole thing that, like I thought you could discuss things with the internet. So at night, there was a small group of people. We took all the analytics at the end of the summer, realized 0.67 of 1% were posting 80% of all negative comments. A lot of them directed towards me. I was accused of being a misogynist, which really is kind of, I don't understand, because I've probably given more women a chance in the music business than anyone. But I thought I could talk to them. I thought you could discuss, but you realize trolls. I didn't know the word trolls before last night. I thought they were cute little dolls. I really did, because I grew up with trolls. There are the internet. You will be attacked. You are out there. I put myself out there. And you realize that 90% of those, now I always, when people attack me, I don't even, most of the time I just ignore it. But I really deep down, you have to get it in your heart that you can go, anyone can stack up what they've done in their life next to me, and once they get us even stacked, then they can start giving me a lot of shit. All right? Yes, you got a question like that. So that was the hard part. The show was great. You will have a great time at this year's show. You won't really know much of the difference. Some people will know, but it wasn't at the show. The shows were still great. And you know what? I still got a lot out of walking out there. In the morning, I'm still at the front gates at 10 o'clock in the morning. Because my whole goal is to get you into the venue as quickly as possible, safely as possible, so you can have a great time and don't miss any of your bands. So that really was my kind of redeeming moment, because and then I'd go back and deal with stuff I was dealing with. Yes?
I don't really have a question. I just want to tell you thank you for everything you do for us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. All right. That's so much fun. I'm open to anything.
So when you talk about different perspective, are you talking about different perspective in globally, or are you talking about different perspective in like aesthetically, or in life, or midterm, short-term, long-term goals or achievement, or what?
Oh, about goals, setting goals, long-term?
Like different perspective, when you talk about different perspective, like...
Different, well, looking at things in different perspective. I look at markets right now. I met with these great guys, and then the lucky thing I have now is a lot of people bring things that are starting. And I met with a group of guys from Korea that came over to the office 2 days ago. And they showed me this app that, and a lot of people show you apps and want to pitch you an app. And right around Christmas time, I said, unless someone brings me a great band or song, that's really what I want to hear around Christmas time. I couldn't look at another app. But they're changing the whole market, and they're putting their mind behind it with K-pop. I know K-pop's a big thing going on right now. But what they did was they put their money where they're worth. They have an app, and it was awesome, but they go in and they went all around the United States and got all these kids that love K-pop to say that they would buy a ticket for this show called XO, and they would support the band. They went back to the management in Korea and said, we want to do a show for you in Los Angeles, Dallas, Vancouver, Chicago, and New York. The management didn't even know they should go there. So they were thinking, it was so different. And they were willing to put their money behind their mouths and promoted 5 shows in the U.S. They'd never done shows in the U.S., these kids. They went and rented the L.A. Sports Arena, which it's so ballsy to me, and they sold every show out. They had 8,000 kids RSV tickets with these. So they were thinking differently and globally. So now they want to go in, and they came to me to help advise them because they want to bring U.S. bands. Anyone know a band called Boys Like Girls? They were around, kind of popular for a moment. I don't know if they could sell a 100-person club out right now. But they've used these techniques. What? Was that generous? But what ended up happening was, they went in and found out that in Singapore, Boys Like Girls is super popular, and Boys Like Girls headlined a 30,000-person festival. So they're changing the model to they're doing the research where people should go. So they're thinking on a global way. It blew me away. So I'm hoping to work with them and start developing markets for U.S. acts. But they went to the labels first. Now, the labels don't want these acts to go all around the world. Most labels don't sell records everywhere. So I said, we need to go to the managers and get them on board because every manager's looking for more places for their artists to be able to go and make money and tour and do their thing. So thinking, now it's globally. World's much more global than it was 10 years ago. But if you're a band, I always say, think locally. Become the biggest band in your backyard before you decide to go anywhere else. Because really, if you can't make it in your own backyard, unless you're playing some so unique music that's really popular somewhere else, and you can go to France or Senegal or somewhere and break out there, because there is always, you can always be huge in another country sometimes. But, be local before you start spreading your wings too far.
So you've been talking about marketing to the larger audiences, but when it comes to getting sponsorships, like you got your sponsorship with Vans, how do you market with with those larger companies? How do you market yourself to them?
Well, for us, it was interesting. A couple years, this was all last year. Everyone was going digital. Everyone was like, we're just going to get a kid on YouTube, and he's going to hold an M&M, and we're going to sell a ton of M&Ms. Brands were taking the lazy way, to be honest. That was a lazy way. We're just going to do this. We don't have to go out and have experiential marketing. We've always kind of based it. I think that when brands are involved in events that people are really emotionally attached to, the connection's much better. Wasn't getting anywhere. So I actually went and did CNN, Bloomberg, all these fine MSNBC. Spoke about the lack of experiential marketing and how I see 18 months down the road, people are going to have to go back to that face-to-face, because I was dealing with the same thing with my posters in my office. And by doing that, we've relaunched everything, and it's amazing how many brands are dusting off their experiential vehicles, which usually can lead to a lot of jobs out there for an awesome bunch of kids that want to go on the road tours this summer. I'm getting emails a lot now. People are dusting off and are going back to that, we need to meet you person to person. It's just like a band. Once you monetize a handshake as a band, I think the relationship changes. I don't let they can't, when we've gotten into a VIP world where everyone pays for VIPs, they get to meet the band, they line up, they're here. I don't allow VIPs at Warped Tour. And I had a little problem with a couple bands trying to sell stuff. No, you're here to make lifelong connections. Because I believe if you're willing to talk to someone, shake their hand, they're going to have your back down the road. When you don't have a single or not as popular, they'll still come out to your shows. So it's still that basic, relationship building. We got away from that in America. I think that's becoming more important again. It's a cycle. The cycles come back around. We have to survive it. The Warped Tour has only made money 1 year in tickets in its entire history. I lose money every summer on that. We make it from our partnerships and relationships and merchandise. Anyone know which year we made money on Warped Tour on tickets? I'll give you 2 pairs of tickets for next summer. Anyone know what year that was? The year that I actually made money on tickets on the Warped Tour. No. 2005? Is that what you said? That's it. 2005, I booked, I kind of saw a trend. I looked ahead. My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, Hawthorne Heights, All American Rejects. I also had my relationship with Fuse, and they were doing TRL. Angels, all these bands, and I booked all those bands a year ahead of time. I went to them and said, I'll give you guys, $1,000 a show next summer, which was more. They were getting about $100 a show at that point. And they bought, and then they were the biggest band at that moment in time. But it almost killed the Warped Tour because we had a different audience come to the Warped Tour. They were TRL kids. They were kids who were watching these bands on TV all afternoon instead of getting out in the sunshine and skating and surfing. And they all came to the Warped Tour, and they were kind of more of a radio. It was hit-driven tour. Kids would stand there all day long and not go to the bathroom. I thought it Depends would have been a good sponsor that summer. To be able to hear that one song. We did 700,000 tickets. Of course, my couple partners on the tour were like, this is awesome. We made it. And I go, it's going to be the end. So I went back the next year and really booked a really underground tour. Helmet and Under Oath were the 2 biggest bands. This year's Warped Tour, you'll see, we're announcing a couple weeks. I'm looking at trends and cycles in music, and I think there's a really cool time for a lot of some of those bands to come around and play. Yep.
So Warped Tour and other, similar tours like that are usually pretty notorious for launching the talent or the careers of a lot of, more underground bands that haven't launched their careers yet. What is the discovery process like on your end, seeking out, new talent, and what can bands do to, get involved in things like Warped Tour?
You probably got a CD in your hand?
No, I didn't want to be that guy.
I would have brought a CD if I were you to hand it because except I can't believe I can't listen to CDs now. I had a 1994 91 4Runner was all I wanted in my life. That's the only car I ever wanted. And I drove it until last year. My daughter wouldn't get in it anymore. I couldn't pick her up at school at it. It was pretty beat up. And then I bought a new car, and it doesn't come with a CD player. Sucks. CD players aren't every day in life. For me, it's all about music. And about 4 years ago, I realized that it's the most important time. So I call it booking season in my office. It's fun. We come home from Warped about mid-August, take a couple weeks off, and I come back to the office, and for 2 months, my office is just a revolving door of music. It's blasting music, it's playing music, artists are coming by, managers are coming by, labels are coming by. Everyone's coming through the office to talk about, music. I get really into it. 2 summers ago, when I booked last summer's tour, I realized I also have to realize I'm not booking the tour. You're going to hear influences of what I like. There's still going to be some influences there of what I like. But I have to book for the audience. And last summer, I was listening to all this great stuff, but it was all over the place. And last summer's lineup was really all over the place. Cool and for a real diet, but it probably need to get a little more focused this year. I love booking season. If you sat through booking season, you would think our business was booming. There's not one band struggling out there. Everyone's blowing up. Everyone's huge. Everyone's got to have a huge album. But it's really a good time. I wish when I started booking Warped Tour, I knew every band. I was still working 300 shows a year. I try to get out more and see bands. I don't go out a lot in L.A. It's really hard to go out in L.A. to see bands. But when I'm traveling, I always try to get out and see as much music as possible. I go to a lot of the smaller music conferences. South by Southwest is not the place to go see bands anymore. I'll go to a lot of these smaller conferences around the country and try to hang out for a couple days and get to know people. And usually always end up booking a band or 2 out of those.
All right, with that, thank you. Let's give a warm round of applause to Mr. Kevin Lyman.